Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's discussion. I am Dev. Along with me is my co host Nora. Have you ever noticed how some arguments feel like they have been running on a loop for decades, yet we never actually resolve them? You go online and it is an absolute battleground. One half of the internet claims renting is just throwing your hard earned money away to pay off someone else's mortgage. The other half screams that home ownership is the single biggest financial trap of the modern era, a gilded cage dressed up as the ultimate dream. Both sides sound incredibly sure of themselves. They bring charts, historical data, and calculators to the fight. But here is what the majority miss. Most of us are not actually asking a financial question when we debate this. We are using the language of money to argue about the kind of life we want to live.
That is exactly where the disconnect begins. If we look at the raw numbers with real rigor, the financial case for renting is much stronger than public opinion suggests. But it relies on a variable that most people choose to ignore. Homeownership does not compete against renting on a direct currency for currency basis. It competes against renting plus investing the difference. When you buy a house, you lock a massive portion of your net worth into a single, highly illiquid asset. You are taking on interest payments, property taxes, maintenance costs, insurance, and transaction fees that most buyers underestimate by half. If you rent and consistently channel that saved capital into a diversified portfolio, history shows that your investments will likely outperform the appreciation of a family home over any reasonable time horizon. But that is a hard sell. No one wants to talk about index funds when they are dreaming of a backyard.
You are right, but notice the move you just made. You framed the entire issue as an investment allocation problem. And while the math is correct, that is not what a person is actually asking when they look at a home. They are asking, where will my kids grow up? Where will I be when I am 60? What does it feel like to close a door that is truly mine without worrying about a landlord raising the rent or selling the property out from under me? When we reduce a home to a line item on a balance sheet, we are winning an argument that most people aren't even having. The house isn't competing against a stock portfolio in their minds, it is competing against a sense of vulnerability.
That is fair, and it is exactly where the argument gets slippery, because we move from a measurable question to an unmeasurable one. But let's look at the other side of that coin. Renting offers a different kind of life value that spreadsheets struggle to quantify, and that is optionality. The freedom to pack up and move to a new city for a career breakthrough without waiting months to sell an asset. The ability to walk away from bad neighbors or to downsize when your life changes shape. That flexibility has a massive financial and psychological value. Most financial models underweight optionality because it is hard to put a price tag on freedom.
The flexibility argument is real. I've seen people turn down incredible opportunities because they were anchored to a mortgage they couldn't get out of without taking a loss. They became geographically frozen at the exact moment in their careers when they needed to be dynamic. But let's put the emotional cost of that optionality on the ledger too. If you can move easily every single year, at some point you look back and realize you have spent a decade optimizing for a life you never actually started building. Perpetual flexibility can easily turn into a feeling of rootlessness. That is a heavy price to pay, and it never shows up on a spreadsheet.
That is a deep truth, and pretending it doesn't exist is just as dishonest as pretending buying always makes financial sense. But we have to ask, is it the lease agreement itself that causes that rootlessness, or is it the constant mobility? You can own a home and still feel completely unmoored if you keep moving every few years. Conversely, someone can rent the same apartment in a vibrant neighborhood for 20 years and feel more connected to their community than a homeowner behind a suburban fence. The house itself doesn't generate belonging. The act of staying does. And staying is a choice you can make whether you own the deed or not.
That is a clever distinction, but the choice to stay isn't always up to you when you rent. And that brings us to the actual context of our lives. The answer changes completely depending on where you are and when you are asking. If you are 28 in a booming tech hub, the math and the life stage look entirely different than if you are 38 with two kids in a city with soaring interest rates and intense school district competition. Whether you are single or in a partnership changes the entire equation. A partner is a different kind of anchor. So, the real answer to this entire debate isn't a simple rule of thumb. It depends on dozens of variables that are constantly shifting.
Which means we are asking the wrong question. Renting versus buying isn't a single debate. It is a bundle of entirely different conflicts masquerading as one. You have a wealth building debate, which is a math problem. You have a mobility debate, which is a life stage problem. You have a belonging debate, which is an identity problem. And you have a family debate, which is a relationship problem. We lump them all together because it is much easier to argue about real estate than it is to ask ourselves what we are actually trying to solve in our lives.
That reframe makes things beautifully messy. People do not actually optimize for what they can measure, they optimize for who they want to become. For many, buying a house is an aspirational act of identity. It is a physical manifestation of becoming the kind of person who has made it, who is stable, who belongs. No amount of sharp math can touch that aspiration. You can be entirely right about the financial ledger and completely miss what the person in front of you is trying to achieve with their life.
I will concede the identity point. A house does change your relationship with yourself, but I also worry about using identity to justify the largest financial decision of your life. We are storytellers. We are incredibly good at inventing narratives to justify purchases we already wanted to make. Every buyer says, "This house represents the next chapter of my life." Half the time they are right, and the other half they are just trying to validate an emotional impulse. It is very hard to tell the difference when you are inside your own head.
So we arrive at a very different place than where we started. It is not a question of whether renting or buying is universally better. It is about identifying which question you are actually trying to answer. If you want to maximize wealth, the math points one way, and renting plus disciplined investing is often the quiet winner. If you want to build a physical anchor for your identity, the math might be secondary, and buying could be the right path, even if the ledger disagrees. The mistake is thinking one decision can solve both problems perfectly. Sometimes you are just choosing which set of regrets you are more comfortable living with.
Exactly. The key is to know what you are paying for and to admit it out loud. If you are paying for the feeling of belonging, own that cost and don't complain when the house doesn't perform like a tech stock. If you are paying for the freedom to move, accept the effort it takes to build community elsewhere. The real trap is buying for belonging and expecting wealth, or renting for wealth and wondering why you feel disconnected at 45.
That is the real challenge. So, as we wrap up today, we want to leave you with a question to sit with. What is your current housing situation actually giving you right now? Is it a return on a spreadsheet, or is it something that could never be captured by numbers? Think about what you are truly paying for and be honest with yourself before you make your next move.
And if you want to keep untangling these kinds of questions with us, make sure to subscribe. We will see you in the next conversation.